I believe that Solana is one of the most undervalued opportunities and the most undervalued layer one blockchain in crypto. It's got the most developers in terms of weekly commits, developers building decentralized applications. It's got the highest volume across its three different decentralized exchanges from Drift, Jupiter, and Radium. It's got the most scalable blockchain with its Anza and Firedancer validator clients, which allow it to transact at a higher TPS than any other blockchain at the moment. It's the most battle-tested blockchain with meme coin activity in the past, being able to show just how much it can handle under stress. Stablecoins continue to increase on this blockchain as Circle continue to mint USDC. However, the price action over the last 8 months has been painful, but since its adoption, it has shown promise and seasonality, and this is not the time to fade the fundamentals. Firstly, all risk is governed and led by the macro. Fed rate cuts open the tap of liquidity, which makes its way straight to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then into Solana sequentially. There are only two occasions in history where the Fed cut in September after stalling for the whole year: 1998 and 2024. In 1998, the index rallied into the cut and then sold off, and then rallied weeks after. In 2024, the market sold off into the cut and then rallied after. On both occasions, the index and risk assets rallied into the year end. This could foreshadow risk assets and Solana's future for the rest of 2025. Solana to Bitcoin has been accumulating for 18 months, and when this breaks out, it breaks out for a sustained long period of outperforming for weeks to months. Solana to Ethereum showing a bottoming where investors are bidding for Solana over ETH. This may be in anticipation for the ETFs that are about to launch in September, potentially front-running these ETFs. ETH to Bitcoin bottom led to a multi-week of outperformance for ETH. ETH is a leading indicator for risk. This aligns with Solana, which is further out of the risk curve. With altcoins excluding ETH and Bitcoin about to break out of this wedge pattern, this has been ranging for 7 years, and the last time there were no stablecoins, no Solana, no DEXs, no real-world assets, no prediction markets. This could signal alt season by the end of the year, and Solana will participate in this. The only fear is the monthly Solana unlocks, but the reason this is not a concern is the Solana daily volume is over 5 billion, which is 2x the unlocks, which can easily be absorbed by the ETFs and investors who will transition to a risk-on market as the Fed starts to pivot its fiscal policy and eases in September. So in this video, I'm going to go through some of the fundamental signals that I believe will help support Solana's price action through the end of the year. I'm going to go through Bitcoin being the leading indicator for risk. I'm going to go through liquidity and how it gets hunted. I'm going to go through some of the macro signals and then finish off with how could it be relevant. So if you like videos on risk, subscribe, like, comment, let's get straight into it. Fundamentally for me, Solana depicts Metcalfe's law, which is adoption leads to growth of the asset in terms of its value. So the more it's adopted, the more the asset will grow. Solana is the most used blockchain. It's the most easy to use interface. It's the fastest, the cheapest, and the most scalable. So looking at these metrics, comparing it to Ethereum, this data comes from InvestAnswer's Crypto Compendium score, which allows him to compare assets based on daily active users, daily transactions, the volume, daily active users per market cap. So looking at Ethereum and Solana compared together, the Nakamoto coefficient, which is how decentralized is the blockchain, is 950% more for Solana. The block time in seconds, how fast are these transactions processed onto the blockchain and validated? 2,930% more than Ethereum. Finality time is 3,601x more than Ethereum. Max TPS is 15,776 times more than Ethereum. Daily transactions, 59x more than Ethereum. Daily active users, 6.5x more than Ethereum. Daily transactions over daily active users, 7 times more than Ethereum. The average fee is 25,000 times cheaper than Ethereum. Fully diluted market cap per daily active transaction is 279 times better than Ethereum. The fully diluted market cap per daily active user is 34 times better than Ethereum. These metrics are incredibly important, imperative for the growth and the scalability and the adoption of a blockchain. Going back to Metcalfe's law, the cheapest, the fastest always wins. Digital asset treasuries are starting to build a floor for Solana's price action as Galaxy Jump and Multicoin seek 1 billion to create Solana treasuries. New Solana treasuries again are raising over 400 million with the help of Pantera. And this leads to the amount of Solana that these digital asset treasury companies will take. It's gone up 50% and it's 1.5% of the supply. As Gemini's exchange, credit card, starts to climb on the finance app for Apple, it brings more attention to the fact that staking has arrived for users in the UK, for your Solana and for your Ethereum. At the moment, Solana has currently 3 ETFs approved, the SSK Osprey ETF and then 2 leveraged ETFs. The fact that these ETFs are so easily accessible for the everyday investor, it allows people to swap from public equity into a Solana ETF really easily, and therefore there's going to be more exposure. This foreshadowed Bitcoin's price action. When it was approved for Bitcoin ETFs in 2024, the price of Bitcoin has gone up 3x since then. Ethereum's price action, through the fact that the ETFs allow for exposure, is absorbing more of this ETH, leading to its price action being so positive recently. This is also going to foreshadow the potential of what Solana will do into the year end. These 12 ETFs are likely to come online by the end of September. When Bitcoin's dominance reached the high 60s, this was brutal for all altcoins. For altcoins to be able to perform and outperform, Bitcoin dominance needs to come down, but the amount of liquidity going into the crypto market cap needs to continue going up. So Bitcoin still needs to increase in price, and that means that Solana, SWI, Hype, Ethereum can start to also outperform as more liquidity moves out of Bitcoin and that dominance comes down and moves into the crypto wide market. So just looking at Bitcoin, it still needs to move up in order for altcoins to continue to climb as well. The Bitcoin power law model just shows that every time it's always mean reverted from this line. This shows me that there's still more room for this cycle for Bitcoin, which means that there's still more room for altcoins as well. On a more macro scale, you've got the Bitcoin to gold chart, which has not yet broken out. It's still ranging in this wedge pattern. And it's when that breaks out above that resistance line that has been in place since 2021 that you start to really see the price action. And then this will also impact more the altcoins such as Solana. Bitcoin price drawdown from all-time highs is a lot more stable because of those treasuries, because of those ETFs, and because of sovereigns. This also foreshadows why ETH has more shallow drawdowns. And what could also happen when Solana ETFs are approved, you have 12 sustained buyers that are able to easily access Solana through the ETFs. And another reason why there's more stability within Bitcoin's price action is that institutional demand for Bitcoin continues to outweigh new supply. As the new supply is mined, the institutional interest has just grown and continues to sustain heavy buying pressure on this newly mined supply. And finally, the stablecoin market cap has reached a new all-time high. That means that as soon as Tether and Circle stop printing and minting more USDC and USDT, that's a concern. But if they are continuing to add new supply, that new supply of stablecoins usually finds its way into risk once the Fed start to ease. I want to talk about the battle between Jane Street and Binance. Binance are the biggest crypto exchange on the planet. Jane Street are one of the largest hedge funds on the planet. They both hunt liquidity. They both market make. And therefore, they're both trying to find max pain with the price. However, because Binance are not regulated and Jane Street are, there's usually a lot of volatility and the suppression of the price because Binance want to prevent the price going up. Jane Street are ready for the price to move up. And the different levels are shown on these indicators. You can see here that every single time you have these highly leveraged longs and shorts that open up above the price action. This is on Binance. And sometimes Jane Street have their CME futures open price at a higher point. But Binance still want to bring the price down to liquidate these leveraged longs and also these leveraged shorts. So they like to move and be volatile on bank holidays, weekends, where it's low volume, and Jane Street aren't able to counteract that price action that's coming from Binance. However, even though it says here that Solana's lower level is 192, but I want to go to this liquidation map on Coinang and derivatives and look at the liquidation heat map, where you can see that even though it says 192 for Solana, if you go on the Binance Sol USDT, you'll see that those liquidation levels go a bit lower than 192, and that's on the daily. And then if you go to the weekly, you can see that those liquidation levels go down to 178. And therefore, you can see that the price is always going to try and move as low as it can to take out these longs, and then also then revert back to take out the shorts. So it's a really useful way to check where that price could go. So using Coinang is a really great tool to help you understand the price action, especially of Solana, which is what this video is focused on. Finally, I want to finish off with the macro, and I'm going to go really quickly through this. You've got the different governors, and there are Biden appointees, Lisa Cook, Philip Jefferson, Michael Barr, Jerome Powell. But then you've also got this increase of Trump appointees, Michelle Bowman, Christopher Waller, Stephen Miram. And this means that the likelihood of a Fed rate cut in September, the pressure is on because these voting members have a lot of influence. Solana is affected by the growth of the GDP. Solana is affected by the macro, just like every other asset, especially on the risk curve. The GDP growth rate, quarter over quarter, has continued to climb. And you can see that recessionary period in January, the first quarter of 2025, we're now over 3%, which is absolutely massive. You've now got the real consumer spending quarter over quarter is starting to increase, and that will continue into the back end of the year, where Q4 is usually seasonally one of the best quarters in terms of people spending money. September is a rough month for all asset classes as the index, the S&P, always as a composite ticks down. The volatility and the risk goes up into September. The VIX starts to spike higher, which means that people start to de-risk into September. But then by the end of September into October, it's usually turning around, and that's when Solana has its best month seasonally. I want to finish off with could it be relevant? Because for me, when I make these videos, it's not time sensitive, even though it would be important to be able to position yourself in all of these risk assets from Tesla, Bitcoin to Solana as early as you can, and then Nvidia, Meta, to be able to catch these moves at the right times. And seasonally, these assets perform the best in Q4. But focusing on Bitcoin and then how that filters into Solana, Bitcoin is just 20 basis points of global wealth. It's tiny in comparison to real estate and bonds, where bonds are used to pay for real estate through mortgages, and then equities. It's absolutely minuscule. And so if you think about the fact that Bitcoin takes up such a small amount of the global wealth, Solana takes up a fraction of what Bitcoin takes up in the crypto asset market, it just shows that there's so much more growth for Solana, which is going to be a blockchain, the rails that could power the NASDAQ, could power an exchange of public equities. And so there is just so much growth potential with this particular crypto asset, with this particular blockchain. Macro assets will shift towards equity and Bitcoin by 2045. So if Bitcoin takes up 280 trillion of this global wealth as assets start to move towards it, how much do you think Solana would take up of this? And just the growth over the next 10 years, if it still exists. But if they continue to build, develop, and iterate, I'll continue to want to have a position. If they stop and there is competitors, then you have to have your tap dancing shoes on. You have to be able to adapt and go, okay, this is not the future. But currently, with what they are doing, the advantage that they have with Anza and the Fire Dancer client, they are just creating a scalable blockchain that anyone can use. They've got the best UX experience. The user experience is just perfect. So I feel like Solana are going to continue to build product market fit applications that can be used and actually be very beneficial when you are sending money across the world and you want to pay with a fraction of a price, when you're perping and using leverage and you want to be able to stop that position as quickly as you can, you want to have time on your side and finality on your side. And finally, Metcalfe's law is the way to determine the value of a network. And therefore, the value of a network is how many people are adopting it. And Solana has that high adoption rate. For every blockchain, it's got the highest. And therefore, I feel the Solana blockchain will get its value appreciated as soon as these ETFs are approved. And then that more traditional money can start to find its way into the ETFs. So, hope you got some value from this video. I hope it helps you understand that Solana is building under the fundamentals, and there's so many bullish signals that will help this price action for Solana into the end of the year. So, if you did get value from this video, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.